I'm Jolene Wynn, and this is the Porn Addict's Wife podcast, episode number 202, Believe Big. Hello, my ladies. How are you? Happy Easter. I am actually recording this on Sunday, and today is Easter. And I hope you guys have a beautiful Easter celebrating with your family. And I wanted to remind you guys of a couple of things real quick before we start. Number one, tomorrow, April 1st through the 3rd, this is not an April Fool's joke, I am hosting Coach Week. This is a 3-day experience where you get to come and get coaching from me, and it's totally free. We're going to do Zoom calls Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And you can sign up. This is free for all of you at jolenewynn.com. You can go to the Coach Week tab. You can register. And even if you can't come live or you miss the first day or you can only come to one day, go ahead and register. You will get access to the call that day, but you will also get access to the replays. And this is your chance, just if there's anything that you're struggling with, if there's a concept that you've heard on the podcast and you want help applying, if you feel stuck somewhere, this is for you. Come get help from me. I'll be on the calls and I'll be working with you personally to help you get past wherever you're stuck. So again, you can go to jolenewynn.com, go to the Coach Week tab, you can register for free, and I will see you there. The second thing that I wanted to let you know is one of the things that I have seen as kind of a theme. It's fascinating. I tend to see themes not only with my clients, but with my listeners, and feedback that I get is so many of you are struggling with resentment. So I am doing a healing resentment masterclass in April, and I want to invite you to join. This is going to be inside my coaching program, so if you join my program, you will also be able to join. I am thinking about making that available to you guys, so make sure you get on my email list. It would be a course that you would pay a small amount in order to get access to, so make sure you're on my email list. You can go to my website, jolenewynn.com, to be able to get on the email list so that you guys know ahead of time when it is and how to sign up. I already know the dates of when it'll be, and I'll tell you that right now. It will be April 22nd to the 24th. And if you register, you'll also get access to the replay. But I'm not sure, I'm not sure if I'll just be doing that in my program or if I'll be opening that up a little bit. So go get on my email list so that you're the first to know. All right, ladies, are you guys ready? Today, I have something that I am super excited to share with you guys, and it's a story about what I've been kind of going through the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and this is not what I wanted. This is not what I had planned to do my podcast on. I have a whole list of new ideas for the podcast, and we could be doing, there's like 6 months worth of podcast episode ideas that I really want to share with you, but this one is what I feel called and inspired to share with you today, and I'm so excited, and it is all about believing big. So a week and a half ago, I was working with my coach, because I have a coach, because we all need coaches, and we were working on our upper limits, okay? I had a big upper limit breakthrough. If you don't know what an upper limit is, basically it comes from the idea, if you guys have ever read Gay Hendricks, The Big Leap, it's his book, that's what it's called, The Big Leap, and he kind of coins this phrase of an upper limit, and an upper limit at its core, at the very simplest, is basically just the thoughts in your mind about yourself, what you're worthy of, or what's possible for you to have, right? So it's kind of the way that I've heard it described many times is kind of you have an internal temperature gauge, right? So maybe you have all right, your body just sits comfortably at 60 degrees. I'm just totally making this up, okay? Your body sits comfortably at 60 degrees, and you might raise a couple, but you might go down a couple, but basically that's kind of where you stay. This is your comfort zone. This is where you like to live. At my house, it's 67. The temperature at my house is 67 year round. Okay, it might go up a few degrees, go down a few degrees, but it's pretty much at 67. That's where I like to keep my house. If you also think about your weight, there's so many of us as women, we have kind of a comfort zone of where we keep our weight. This is our upper limit of what we believe is possible, right? It might be especially if you struggle with weight, you might be able to lose 20 pounds, but then you'll kind of gain it back, right? Or maybe you'll lose the same 15 pounds over and over and over and over, but it just keeps coming back. Or maybe you'll see it with money, right? You'll say, okay, I always get to the same amount of savings, or we'll pay off our debt, and then some big expense will come and we'll go back into debt. And it's kind of the same amount. I've been seeing this in my bank account. I have like the same amount in savings in my bank account. And it's been that way for like 6 months, which is great. But I find it so fascinating, maybe almost a year. It's been so interesting to just see it kind of stay there. And every time it goes up a little bit, it just comes right back down to the same number. So I have been working on thinking about all of these different things in my business, where my upper limits are. And it's, again, the thoughts in your mind about yourself, about what you're worthy of, or what's possible for you to have. Okay, so I'm going to give you the example in my business, and then I'm going to give you a personal example that might resonate with you a little bit more. Okay, so as I was working with my coach, I recognized that I had reached my upper limit in my business. Okay, and I broke through that, and what that looked like for me is believing what was possible for me to create, the impact that I want to have. Okay, and I broke through this by processing what I was afraid of. And I had been hitting this for months. Okay, January, February, March of this year was like emotionally so overwhelming. I felt like I was just treading water. And no matter how much I tried, no matter how much effort I gave, nothing was working, nothing was happening. It's like when you go to the gym and you eat well for months at a time and nothing changes. I did this once. I hired a nutritionist. And I'm really good at working out, but I hired a nutritionist. I was like, okay, if I'm really good at working out, it must be my eating that's the problem. And I hired a nutritionist. I tracked everything I ate for 6 months. I worked out 5-6 days a week for 6 months, and I weighed exactly the same as when I started. And it was so depressing, and I was so overwhelmed. And I was like, okay, and that's what was happening in my business. I was like, I am doing absolutely everything I can. I feel like I'm treading water. I'm so overwhelmed. I feel like I just need a break. And yet I knew that if I took a break from my business, and this is what my coach said, she's like, maybe you need a break. And I said, okay. And I know that that sounds awesome. It felt very relieving to think about a break. And yet I knew that if I didn't solve it emotionally, that the break wouldn't work, because I would have this break and it would be awesome. I wouldn't work for a couple of weeks and that would be fantastic. However, if I didn't solve what was going on emotionally underneath it, then as soon as I came back to my business, I would start running the same pattern. And this is what happens so often in our marriage or our relationships, right? We run the same emotional pattern and it's exhausting. And yet we think that if we shift our circumstances, that it will somehow create the relief that we're looking for. And it might temporarily, but our brain will always go back to the same pattern. This is why so many women, they'll say, okay, well, I think I should separate from my husband in order to try and work through this. And that's fine. I'm all for you taking the physical separation as long as you work through the emotional part, because if you don't, then that physical separation will be great. You'll feel a lot better, but you'll come back and that same pattern will happen. Moms, if you've ever done like a girls trip or a girls weekend, you understand this, right? It's like you have 3 days by yourself or with your girlfriends. You feel really rejuvenated. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go back. I'm going to be a Mary Poppins mom. I'm never going to yell at my kids again. This is amazing. You come back, you're so happy. But all that happens when you come back, if you don't actually deal with the emotional patterns that are creating the responses in the first place of you yelling at your kids and feeling overwhelmed and all these things, then all that happens is you get a little break from it and you come back and it just starts to repeat. In fact, all that happens is you come back and you're annoyed because now the house is even dirtier than when you left it. And the kids look like no one's brushed their hair in 3 days. People forgot that you can even brush your teeth, that toothbrushes exist, right? And then your kid peed the bed and nobody changed the sheets, right? So it's like even worse when you come back than when you left, right? Okay, if you guys follow me, moms, do you know what I'm talking about? Right? This is what happens when we don't deal with the emotional pattern that is running underneath. So I knew that I needed to handle and look at the emotional pattern underneath. And that's what I spent time doing. I processed that. I did a lot of self-coaching that night after I worked with my own coach. And I processed what was underneath, which was a fear that I was incapable. Okay, remember, an upper limit is something you believe about yourself. And I was believing that it wasn't possible, that everything I want in my life isn't possible, that what I want for my business, that the reach that I want to have with all of these women, the people that I want to hit, these women that I want to reach, you guys, that it's not possible, that I'm not capable of doing it, okay? And that fear that I was incapable kept me small, right? It's like that fear of failure. What if it doesn't work? What if I try it and nothing happens? What if I go for it and I don't actually hit it? It's that fear, right? I was believing small in myself, in my business, in you. that was one of the fascinating things that I realized, as I realized that believing that it wasn't possible wasn't just a belief that I was limiting in myself. It was also a limiting belief about you as my audience, about you and what you're capable of, about you and what you want for yourself and how willing you are to go get it. And that was so fascinating to me because I believe so logically. I believe in you guys so much. And yet my fear subconsciously was kind of turning this belief on you, on a disbelief on what you could do, on what God could do. I had a limiting belief in my husband, in my body. I processed all of this. I processed this feeling of incapable, and then I felt amazing. Okay, this was on a Thursday night. Thursday night I felt amazing. Friday was phenomenal. Saturday was incredible. And Sunday I started to notice that this same kind of fear was creeping back in a different area of my life. So mostly I was feeling it in my business, and I processed that, and I was feeling amazing. And then I started noticing it come up in another place. I was noticing that, right, if you think about that temperature gauge, I was feeling very euphoric, very happy, very believing in what was possible. And then I started noticing other fears, other worries, other concerns that I'd already processed and overcome start creeping back in a different area. And this was in my marriage. And it was so fascinating. And I noticed it. And I said, I don't even believe these fears anymore. Like, why are they coming back up? And I thought to myself, I wonder if this is an upper limit problem, because that's part of what happens when we hit our upper limit and we break through. If we start to believe something new and different, our brain says, whoa, you need to calm down, and you need to come back down to earth where we live, and you need to come back to our comfort zone, because it's really uncomfortable to live in more positive emotion. It feels really weird, especially if you've been living in less positive emotion most of your life. Okay. So this is what was happening. And I started to see it, but I also noticed, okay, maybe this is actually true. And so on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I started feeling this, and I started talking to my husband about it. And this was this last week. So a week ago, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I had some conversations with my husband about it. I saw it, I noticed it, and I processed it. And I really processed it a ton last night. My husband and I were talking, or 2 nights ago, my husband and I were talking a lot about it. And I was like, all right, I want to face this, because I am noticing that this is an upper limit that's coming up. And I want to just process this and let it go. I'm tired of this being here. I'm tired of feeling afraid. And the fear that was coming up was that nothing was ever going to change with my marriage. Not that it wasn't ever going to, because it has. The fear more specifically was that it was naive to believe that it could stay that way. Of everything my husband and I have worked through, all the thoughts that he has had about other women, the attractions he's had to other women, and all of that, which you guys have heard about on the podcast, I was so afraid. There was just, 10% part of me that was really had this fear come up this last week of that it's naive to believe that it's completely gone. And it was coming up a little bit kind of like triggers, right? It was coming up, and I hate that word, but it was coming up a little bit like just a little anxiety here and there about different situations. And I was trying to figure out what this was, and this is what I realized, is that I had this fear or this thought that it's naive to believe that it could just be gone, that I could just have the life of my dreams, the marriage of my dreams, that I could actually give myself permission to relax. For those of you whose husbands have actually worked through their pornography problem and are sober and are clean or whatever you call it and haven't watched porn and who knows how long, you understand this, right? It sounds, and now to those of you whose husbands are still watching, you're like, you're crazy. If my husband was done and wasn't watching porn, I would feel so relieved. And yet that's not what happens if you don't work through your thoughts, because your thoughts are what create your feelings. So yes, it's awesome if your husband isn't watching pornography, but you can still have the thought of, yeah, but what if it doesn't always stay like this? Or he could relapse tomorrow. And as long as you have those thoughts and you're not working on them, then you produce the same anxiety. You produce the same emotional patterns that keep you at that comfort zone, that temperature where you're used to living, right? So I saw it and I noticed it. And the other night I processed it. And as I did, I realized something that was super fascinating. I realized that it was just my brain trying to pull me back down to where I had been. Right? Because I'd broken through these upper limits emotionally. I was feeling amazing. And I recognized that this was just my brain trying to pull me back down to an emotional realm area that I was more comfortable with, to get me back to that temperature level where I had been living, because that's where I was comfortable. So I challenged it. I challenged all the thoughts that came up around this, what's possible. And what was fascinating is I saw that it was the same upper limit in every area of my life. Okay? And this is what I started to challenge. These thoughts, these are the things that came up. It's not possible to have the body I want. All the women in my audience who want coaching have already signed up. It's naive to believe that my husband won't ever go back to thinking about other women. Okay? The fear that it's naive to believe in something you have no proof of yet. That's what was the common thread through all of those, about my body, my business, my marriage. That was the common thread. It was the fear that it's naive to believe in something that you have no proof of yet. Your brain has so much evidence to keep you where you are, right? And that's what your logic argues. And that's what mine did. And these were the thoughts that I had. Look at the last year. Look at your entire marriage. Your husband will probably hurt you again. Look at your body throughout your whole life. The body that you want isn't possible. You've never hit it before. You've never gotten the body of your dreams before. What makes you think you can have it now? Look at the history of your business. The impact that you dream of won't happen. You've had the same income for the last 2 years in a row. This is it. This is all that's possible. Look at the number of women, at the rate of women signing up for your program. Women don't want you to help them. They don't want coaching. They don't want to sign up. Look at the evidence of the past. The past is proof of what can happen. It's naive to believe in something you don't have proof of. It's naive to go against the years of evidence that you have. These were the thoughts that my brain was giving me. My brain was giving me all the reasons to stay exactly where I've been, to be small, to limit myself and my life, to believe small. And then I had this thought, and it completely changed everything. I was not meant to believe small. I was meant to believe big. Ladies, borrow that thought. You were not meant to believe small. You were meant to believe big. I was not meant to believe small. I was meant to believe big. I was meant to feel passionately about things in ways that are different than other people. I was meant to believe big in my husband, in myself, in God, in my business, in you. I was meant to believe big. After all, belief, ladies, requires no evidence. Belief is faith, trust, or confidence in something. And I can choose to believe big. Today, ladies, is Easter, and it is a day of big belief. Believing in something that all of history proved was impossible. Belief that death could be conquered, that sins could be forgiven, that we could be redeemed, that Christ could be put to death and then rise. That is big belief. I wasn't made to believe small, and neither were you. So today, ladies, I am challenging you to believe big in yourself, and to move your life in that belief. You were made to believe big. Ready, set, go. I love you, ladies. I'll see you guys next week on a brand new episode. Take care and happy Easter.